Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Tim Man Collections. And today I'll be reading another chapter out of the South Carolina Ghost from the Coast to the Mountains by Nancy Roberts. And this chapter is called The Haunted Castle at Beaufort. So here we go. On the warm July day I arrived in Beaufort. My mission was an unusual one, for I was on or in search of a ghost. There should be many there, for the streets of this historic town are lined with fascinating antebellum homes. But when I turned on Craven Street and saw the tall towers and glooming column facade of the house on the waterfront, I felt strangely certain that this was where I would find my story. A few hours later, I was back after discovering that the house called the Castle is indeed linked with a ghost. And I wished I could find a house around here that was haunted, but I don't want to get scared by a demon ghost. But anyway, this European-style home, built by Dr. Joseph F. Johnson in the 1850s, enjoyed the reputation of being one of the finest of Low Country. The house looms high above the great bend of the Beaufort River and seems to brood darkly over the past. A 2-acre garden around it is full with huge azaleas, ancient gnarled oaks, and long tangled vines. That seems sort of peaceful. When the tide rises, a small marshy stream extends its watery arm to encircle it and create a moat. Viewed through a evening mist or the dim light under moss-draped trees, the home takes on an eerie, dream world quality. As long as she could recall, Eliza, daughter of Dr. Johnson, had known the castle was not like other houses. She had heard unaccountable noises and the mysterious opening and closing of doors. When not a breath of air stirred in the humid, symmetric, tropical Beaufort night, she knew that the house had been used as a hospital by federal troops after Fort Beauregard fell in 1861. Yeah, you go to places that are known to be former hospitals, then yes, there would be some haunted stuff there. The little laundry building has served as a morgue, and just the two think about it was enough to make Alyssa shudder. She soon discovered that all of the places in this enormous three-story, the basement was the strangest, for she never seemed to feel alone there. If I go into something that big right there, I'll be probably getting the heebie-jeebies too, but anyway. At first, this made her uncomfortable, and as she played with her dolls, she would place her back against the wall and turn their china faces toward her so she could always look out into the shadows. Sometimes she would play here with the cook's little girl, who was about her age, but before they had been down there long Augusta, the girl's mother would come. She would bustle down the steps in all her starched dignity, and the girls would flee before her. She warned them obnoxiously that something would surely get them in that basement. One time she said it would be a haunt, and young Alyssa stared at her curiously. Was that why she had those extraordinary feelings when she was alone down there? What? Did a haunt? Had Augusta ever seen one? She asked, but Augusta just frowned, flicked her feathered duster vigorously over the glass doors of the china cupboard, and pretended to be too busy to answer. That was a sign to Alyssa that the question had made her uncomfortable. Alyssa sought opportunities to go down there to play, but her first real chance came one hot summer day when Augusta was sick and sent word that her sister would come in instead. The sister spent the morning polishing silver and cooking dinner, leaving Alyssa free to do as she pleased. She would always remember that day, for it was the first time her doll, Emma Bell, had ever worn the beautiful new taffeta dress her mother had given her. Emma Bell had skin white as porcelain, rosy cheeks, and black hair that was never out of place, for it was painted on her head. The blue dress with its tight bodice and high neck fitted to perfection. 11-year-old Alyssa decided that she and Emma Bell would have a tea party in the basement. Now, out of all the places you had to go in the basement, really? And you know it's haunted. Taking the doll table, a set of miniature china dishes decorated with tiny pink flowers, and leaving the door at the top of the stairs cracked ever so slightly, she and Emma Bell descended into the dimness of the cool ground floor. The house was built completely of brick, which insulated it so well against the heat that the basement felt as pleasant as a spring house. I would like to know what that feels like, but anyway. Alyssa sat the doll across from her and began arranging the dishes carefully on the tiny table. Startled by what she thought must be the metallic sound of the door latch at the head of the steps, she dropped one of her little cups to the floor. She listened intently, for she knew she would hear the sound of footsteps on the wide, bare floorboards if Augusta's sister had closed the door. Yeah, you hear footsteps and then you go like, wait a minute, nobody's here. That'd be creepy. But anyway. All was quiet. When she picked up the cup, she noticed its tiny handle had broken off, and in her consternation, though no more about the sound. Soon she became absorbed in make a tea party chatter as she mimicked the subjects her mother and her friends discussed. Emma Bell was a good listener to her monologue on fashions, whose sons were most eligible, and the latest news from Charleston. Mrs. Johnson was as accomplished hostess, and although Alyssa was still young, anyone overhearing her might guess she would carry on the family tradition. She was in the midst of telling Emma about the young Charlestonian at the ball who begged me for, when suddenly she stopped and stared over the doll's head. Her blue eyes widened until they were almost round, but she did not move or cry out. Quite near her stood a tiny, wizened little old man. He wore a cap closely fitted about his face, brightly colored shirt, tight breeches, and pointed shoes. His antics were so ridiculous that she was tempted to laugh rather than be afraid. There was the faint, silvery tinkle of bells, and then, in a flick of an eyeball, the flick of an eyelid, excuse me. I said eyeball. He was gone. It was not long afterward that Alyssa passed the age when the doll parties were absorbing and the visits to the basement ceased. She did not see the little man as much as feel his presence or sometimes hear the sound of his bells ever so faintly. As she grew up, her friends affectionately called her Lily, and the more prosaic name of Alyssa was used less and less. She and her husband gave many gay parties, and one of the party pastimes was often a table raping session. Oh, no, no. I do not want to go to one of those, but anyway. It was a popular fad, and it was not evidence of the supernatural. At least it was amusing. Between the double stairways of the house, Lily and her guests would gather around a table, place their hands upon it, and ask questions. The table would rap back, spelling out answers. Oh, I'm sorry. It was rapping, like R-A-P-P-I-N-G. I thought it meant something else, but anyway, sorry. Um, the table would rap back, spelling out answers by the numbers of raps. But one night the words could not be understood. They were obviously in a foreign language. No one present could translate. A guest knew a linguistics expert at a large university and suggested the words be sent to him. Lily Daner was inquisitive enough to do some or so, and the answer came back. These words are Archaic French. That's A-R-C-H-A-I-C. By now, Lily knew who the little man was, and she was sure it was the spirit, his spirit that had spoken. As the story is told, when settlers led by Frenchman Jean Rapat, I hope I ain't butchering his name, sorry, came ashore in 1562, a jester who was a dwarf accompanied them. The little fellow was later hanged. It may be the cruel Captain Albert de la Paris, and the dwarf spirit wandered over the marsh and sand isles for some 280 years. I hate to be one of the tortured souls anyway. When the European-style mansion was constructed by Dr. Johnson, Gulnach, that's G-U-E-N-A-C-H-E, as the jester was called, had at last found a place that reminded him of home. He moved to the ground floor soon after it was completed, and it is said to have been so over the years. None of this disturbed Mrs. Daner, who is remembered in Beaufort to this day as very much the Grande Dame. She was a spirited lady who would shoot from the upstairs porch at anyone who came into her yard after dark. Gave up her mourning earlier than the other ladies of her day, and dyed her hair a bright red right up until the time of her death in her 90s. Lily Daner's successors in the castle were her nephew Howard E. Daner and his wife Ruby. Ruby Daner recalls her experience with the spirit which occurred one rainy night when clouds of white mist from the river lay thick about the house and over the garden. In an upstairs bedroom adjacent to the portico, her grandson was sick in bed. Mrs. Daner was in her room across the hall when she heard the screen door slam in the boy's room. She darted into his room calling out, "You ought to be in bed, Daner. Come in from the porch this instant." But there lay the boy snug in his bed, and only seconds after the door slammed. "I haven't been up, grandmother. Who was that old man who went out the screen door?" She knew it must have been Gunnock. I'll be asking a question too, as if I heard like a big bang or whatever in the house. Over the years, there have been stories of encounters with the little dwarf, and even today the castle retains its air of dark mystery. The great sentinel oak, now 20 feet in girth. Good Lord Almighty! I feel like a dwarf next to the tree. Happy darn. Stands guard before the steps. Beneath the front porch are the brick arches, the shadowy walkway, and behind it, the basement. Does Gunnock still perform his antics on certain rare occasions in the castle? Is the silvery sound of his bells, sometimes heard when the mist curls like smoke about the lower floor of the house. Who will see him next, and will dare to say, "I saw the dwarf Gunter today"? If I was in that basement and I heard bells ringing, how many of you would be like me, be like, "All right, I'm out of here"? But I don't know if I could stand hearing ghost bells, especially like rattling chains. But anyway, all right, that's gonna be it for now. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those post notifications, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.